When it comes to classifying work like TV, movies, and even books, comedy is the neighborhood pool. Everyone gets a dip. What I mean by that is that work that has a few funny moments in it, but is really more of a drama or musical or whatever, gets to compete alongside purpose-built comedies. And we saw this most recently with The Bear winning Best Comedy at the Golden Globes. Let's take a closer look at what's going on through the lens of the comedy-focused writer, even if that lens is filthy and probably cracked. Let me first take a second to look through my filthy lens and thank these patrons for supporting the channel. So much stuff that creators need is a forever monthly subscription fee now, so to have your support really helps. I appreciate it on an emotional level too. Thank you guys. And f you, Adobe. I also want to mention we're doing a 1960s comedy film series on the Discord this month. Each week we'll watch a film and discuss. And you don't have to be a patron to join us on the Discord, by the way. You get special recognition and stuff if you are, but it's not required. Link below. Now let's talk about the most famous of 1960s comedies, The Bear. Now don't get me wrong, I am not shitting on The Bear. I love it and I cannot wait for more. I'm definitely open to a discussion about whether it's a better show than Ted Lasso or Abbott Elementary, the shows that it beat for that comedy Golden Globe. But a better comedy than those two? The question is absurd on its face, and the Golden Globes make themselves look like a joke for asking it. The trouble with this is that if you, like me, have that burned-in character defect that makes you want to watch and make comedy, which I assume you do or you wouldn't be here, it's hard to find current work to look up to or figure out what current trends are. In fact, if you go on a film ranking site like Letterboxd or Rotten Tomatoes or whatever and search for comedies, maybe only something like 1 in 10 are real comedies. The rest are tourists. Now, I realize I'm ranting a bit like an angsty teen here, and that's because this has offended me since I competed in one-act play competitions as an angsty teen. It was a known thing in my middle school days that comedies do not win the competitions, dramas do. Our middle school comedy plays were brilliant, and I will not hear otherwise. And I definitely don't want to hear from anyone who saw or read them or was in them. Letting tourist films and shows into the comedy ring is like having a competition for nerdiest boxer, but you let popular people into the ring and they're allowed to do mixed martial arts. Are they sexy? Sure. Are they good at fighting? Absolutely. Congrats on both. But this isn't nerd boxing anymore. What's the objective difference between Ted Lasso and The Bear? They both have dramatic themes. The main characters are dealing with past trauma and anxiety issues. Both shows start with the main characters having just made a huge career shift, including relocating to a different place. I mean, if you're just reading the log lines, they start to look very similar. Except, of course, you finish an episode of Ted Lasso feeling good, and you finish an episode of The Bear crying too hard to relapse as a smoker. This goes both ways in some sense. Speaking as a filmmaker and novelist, I encourage you to not let your work be classified as a comedy. When my film, The Mostly Serious History of Wine, found a distributor, I asked them to please not add a comedy tag to it. And they said, "Who are you again?" In my opinion, it's better to let people find out that your work is funny than to tell them up front. Surprise is valuable. You know, often if you tell someone something is a comedy, they go into it with their arms crossed like, "Okay, Mr. Funny Man, let's just see you be funny." It's better to let them think it's a drama or horror or documentary and let the comedy reveal itself. And if it falls flat, well, hopefully you have a strong story outside the comedy to rely on. Is there an objective way to differentiate between real comedy and tourists? This is not a rhetorical question. I'm legitimately asking. I don't think there is, but if you can think of one, I'm interested to hear it. What about something like Mamma Mia versus Holy Grail? They both have funny moments, and Holy Grail has singing and dancing. Did you know Abbot composed this song? This is not a new discussion. In 2021, the Emmys announced new rules whereby comedy entries had to have 6 episodes that were primarily comedic, and dramas had to have 6 that were primarily dramatic. Previously, they had used runtime to denote comedy versus drama, but in today's landscape, that's not really workable. But regardless, you can see how a comedy writer on a show like Abbott Elementary would feel annoyed that an awards ceremony would skip over their hard work for a more popular show, even if it's not as funny. This article in Entertainment Weekly points out that the previous rules meant that shows like Barry were incorrectly classified as comedy based on runtime. So Barry is misclassified as a comedy? Barry's a comedy, guys. Am I going insane here?
Hey, man. Are you seeing this beautiful morning? What are you doing? How are you?
What am I doing? I'm set up here like you asked me to.
Oh, right. Duh.
Y'all for real think that Barry is a serious action thriller? Really? I've been using real to describe a comedy I think is a real comedy, and tourist to describe a show or film that I think is throwing on a comedic toupee. If you can think of better terms, let me know. Ultimately, I think we just have to get used to the fact that comedy is a big tent. Sometimes people are going to be in the tent who aren't dyed-in-the-wool comedy people, and honestly, that's fine. Weird, maybe, but fine. I mean, we're all just trying to make some sort of art and enjoy our lives, after all. Who can argue with that? A quick note on possible motivations for award shows. I'm not sure if people still do this, but back in my day, when you went to a deli, they would have a big fishbowl by the register that said, "Put your business card in here for a chance to win free catering." Now, let's say that you and I are the deli owners. Are we going to blindfold ourselves and randomly pull a winner out of that fishbowl? Or are we going to look at each card and pick a winner based on who could be a great contact for our deli going forward? Now, call me a cynic, but I think we're doing option 2. Listen, folks, we're writers who focus on comedy. There's only one reason to do what we do, because we love it. A handful of us might get a few bucks to do this at some point, but for the most part, not. And even if we do, the money will never match up to the hours we've put in. With that in mind, I think there's room in a big tent for everyone who feels that love of the game, whether they express it exactly the way that I would like them to or not. So, real comedies, tourists, get in this tent. In closing, enjoy another short clip from the hit jukebox musical romantic comedy Mamma Mia.
I have to push the pram along.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe, and maybe jump on the Patreon if you want to help me make more. And if you want to talk about comedy writing with people who are trying to do it in a constructive way, we also have a Discord channel.